Let's look at our planet in a way you probably haven't before, as a giant balance sheet. We're going to talk about Earth's natural assets, the massive debts we're racking up, and what it's going to take to get our global account back into the green.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a really simple but kind of powerful idea. Imagine for a second that the Earth has a bank account, and this account is filled with all the natural resources we depend on. Now, some of these resources are like the principal, the core savings you don't touch, and others, they're like the interest that account generates. This one idea, this metaphor, is going to be our guide through this whole explainer.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to define our planet's assets, what gets refilled and what's, a one-time deal. And then we'll get into the pretty high cost of our withdrawals. After that, we'll see how all this activity is literally reshaping the face of the Earth. And finally, we'll look at the path forward, how we can actually live more sustainably.
All right, so first things first. Before you can balance any budget, you have to know what's actually in the accounts. Section 1 is all about defining Earth's assets. What exactly are we working with here?
So at the most basic level, what even is a natural resource? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like, materials we find in nature that we can use to make a living. And this means everything from the sunlight hitting your roof to the rare metals that make your smartphone work. It's a huge category, so we've got to break it down.
And this is where that bank account idea really clicks. Think about it. On one side, you have your renewable resources. This is your interest. Things like solar, wind, water, they get replenished naturally and pretty quickly. We can use them over and over. But on the other side, that's the non-renewable stuff. That's our principal. Fossil fuels, minerals, these took millions of years to form. And once we use them up, they are gone. For good.
So now that we get the difference between our planetary interest and our principal, let's take a look at our transaction history. For a long time now, we've been making huge withdrawals. And we haven't been living off the interest. Nope. We've been digging right into the principal. And as we're about to see, those withdrawals have a really heavy price tag.
What's really fascinating here is how it's all connected. It's a domino effect. When we mine for minerals, we're not just digging a hole, we're often clearing entire forests, right? Which destroys habitats and causes the soil to wash away. The mining process itself can pump heavy metals and chemicals into our water and foul the air we breathe. It's just this chain reaction of damage.
And the impact on water it's just staggering. Let this number sink in. 1.2 billion. That is how many people on this planet depend on underground aquifers for their fresh water. But our withdrawals, pulling out too much, too fast, and letting pollution seep in, are draining these critical life support systems faster than nature can ever hope to refill them.
And these withdrawals, they don't just hurt the environment, they absolutely devastate human communities. As this quote makes painfully clear, projects to extract resources often forced indigenous peoples off the lands they've lived on for generations. And it's not just about losing a house, it's the destruction of an entire culture, a whole way of life that's woven into the land itself.
Okay, so that brings us to Section 3. Our constant withdrawals aren't just using up resources under the ground, they're physically reshaping the surface of our planet. And one of the most visible and damaging changes is deforestation.
So what's really behind all this forest clearing? This chart breaks it down perfectly. The biggest driver, by a long shot, is expanding our farms, clearing land for crops and livestock. But you can also see that logging for wood, building roads and cities, and yes, mining, all play pretty big roles in turning forests into something else.
And the consequences of this are massive, creating this whole cascade of new problems. Just look at the impacts here. When forests go, we lose habitats, which leads to a huge loss in biodiversity. We lose one of the planet's biggest sponges for carbon, which just speeds up climate change. And we lose the very tree roots that hold our precious topsoil in place.
And listen, this isn't some abstract, far-off problem. This is happening right now. Just look at the case of the Uttarakhand fires in India. These aren't just natural fires. They're being made way more frequent and way more intense because of a mix of human activity and climate-driven drought. It's a perfect, real-world example of how land damage and climate change feed each other in this incredibly dangerous loop.
Okay, so we've looked at the pretty serious problems that come from dipping into our planet's principal savings. But there is a path forward. Section 4 is all about the solutions. It's about how we learn to live on the natural interest our planet gives us, instead of burning through the capital. A huge piece of this puzzle is changing how we get our energy. This table gives us a great snapshot of the main renewable options. And as you can see, each one has its strengths and its challenges. There's no single silver bullet here.
The real key is to build a smart, diverse mix of these clean energy sources so we can power our world without draining that principal account.
And beyond just energy, we have to manage our land way more wisely. This here is a fantastic blueprint for how to do that. It's really a four-part strategy. We need to farm smarter to protect our soil. We need to actively plant trees and restore our forests. We need to design our cities to work with nature, not against it. And we have to protect the critical wild places we still have left. So ultimately, when you boil it all down, the goal is to find this balance. It's not about choosing between human progress and a healthy climate. It's about finding clever ways to meet all our needs for food, for industry, for homes, without bankrupting the very natural systems that make everything else possible in the first place. Which brings us right back to where we started, that planetary bank account. Every single day, in 1,000 small ways, we all make withdrawals. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. Looking at all these solutions, from renewable energy to reforestation, how can we, as individuals and as a society, start making more deposits to make sure this account stays healthy for all the generations to come?